Thank you. We feel you're welcome. It's such a gift to be here. Thank you, Rabbi Mark and Harry. And I'm just always grateful for the chance to sit with this community, but especially in a week like this one, which has been filled with violence and fear and some kind of insanity, really. So it's just in a turbulent world, which is testing all of us in different ways. It is to be able to come home to this makom, this place, this community, and settle and find gratitude and a measure of calm, and just affirm our wholeness. It is such a blessing. So, as Rabbi Mark said, take a moment just to thank yourself for showing up, to thank each other that we don't have to do this alone. We get to be together in this way and co-create a space to show up exactly as we are and share the burden as Kimberly Mariposa Dueñas shared on Monday, to really share each other's burden. It's not a small thing. And it's incredibly helpful as we move through these days. So we're going to begin sitting, and your eyes can be open or closed or anywhere in between. Just take a moment to unclench your jaw and relax your shoulders and soften. You might take 3 deep breaths as a way of bringing yourself into presence in this moment. Just feeling yourself breathing. Signaling to the body that you are allowed to feel grounded amidst the chaos. You have permission to rest here, even in a world that is constantly demanding our attention. And however you are showing up in this moment, give yourself the blessing of being exactly as you are. Release the fight to banish any feelings, any wishes. Maybe you allow a simple hineni, I'm here, just like this, to ride the breath. So let's take one more full cycle of breath. And you can feel free to open your eyes if you close them. And I'm going to offer a little bit of Torah connected to this week's Torah portion, B'Shalach, and then we'll sit again. So in this week, of course, B'Shalach, we have the dramatic Torah portion that includes the splitting of the sea, Kriyat Yam Suf, in which Moses and Miriam and Bnei Yisrael, our people, sing of their redemption. But before the climactic made-for-movies moment, when our people break out in song, let me just remind you that there was gripping fear. Would Pharaoh and his army kill them all, catch up with them? How are they going to pass through these waters up ahead? Was it a mistake to even venture to believe that they could escape and find freedom? We can imagine, as we sort of imagine the scene, how terrified they must have been. We must have been. So, Harry, if you'll bring up the text, these are verses from our Parsha. I'm going to read it out in English. I've bolded in both Hebrew and in English words that I think will resonate in your experience, certainly resonate in mine as in the moments when I have found myself approaching a difficult passage. As Pharaoh drew near, the Israelites caught sight of the Egyptians advancing upon them. Greatly frightened, vayir'u me'od, the Israelites cried out to God. And they said to Moses, "Was it for want of graves in Egypt that you brought us to die in the wilderness? What have you done to us, taking us out of Egypt? Is this not the very thing we told you in Egypt, saying, 'Let us be, and we will serve the Egyptians'? For it is better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness." But Moses said to the people, "Have no fear. Al tira'u. Stand by." Or as I'm sort of translating here, root and ground yourselves. Hit yatzvu. And witness the deliverance which God will work for you today. Hayom. For the Egyptians whom you see today, Hayom, in this moment, you will never see again. God will fight for you. So you hold your peace, or sort of get still, get silent. Tacharishun. Beautiful. All right, Harry, you can take down the text. So in this moment of perceived danger, naturally, our people were frightened, terrified. And what does Moses instruct them to do? To ground themselves right here in this moment and remember that they're not alone, that God is with them even in this place, to quiet themselves, to, as we say in modern parlance, to protect their peace. And so none of us, hopefully, have been in this situation exactly, but I think many of us, perhaps all of us, have or will feel really anxious, really fearful. We know what it's like to feel an enemy advancing or an obstacle in our path coming after us or in the lives of those we care about. And we know what it feels like when the walls are coming in, that sense of overwhelm and panic, the sort of impossibility that of redemption or relief. And these feelings are precisely why many of us turn to meditation in the first place, to relieve anxiety and stress and to build our capacity for resilience and weathering difficult times. That's certainly the case for me. And I've observed that there are a number of approaches about how we can work with anxiety and fear in mindfulness meditation. And I've observed them for myself because I tend to be very anxious. So one approach is to use this practice to simply calm down, just what I think Moshe was referring to, to ground ourselves, to protect our peace, and to relax the nervous system. So when we steady our minds and attention on a single anchor, which is often the breath, or a phrase, or a mantra, or the sensations in the body, gradually, a sort of inner spaciousness will often emerge. And this brings about a quality of peacefulness, hopefully lessening our anxiety and fear, and quite frankly, our suffering. And there's another approach, perhaps less common, which is to actually look at our experience and learn from it. And so we're still cultivating calm through grounding in the present moment, and inviting in silence, but we actually use some tools of inquiry. So, for example, when we look directly at anxiety in the body, in the mind, we see that it is impermanent and impersonal in nature. And oftentimes we're able to, that awareness allows us to see that we are actually separate from it. We see that anxiety is present because of the want or need to control what is uncontrollable. And the wisdom that comes with that kind of awareness can offer us a kind of inner Yeshua, an inner sort of salvation. So I don't always have the wherewithal to do that kind of curious introspection about what frightens me. Sometimes the wisest thing to do is just find steady ground under my feet and breathe and allow my blood pressure to slow down and my heart to soften. Dayenu, as we say. Sometimes that is more than enough. Similarly, when falling asleep at night, that's not usually a great time to sort of get curious and introspective about looking closely at anxiety. But there are times, and perhaps this is one of them, when it is possible to look directly at anxiety and just notice, be kind of curious about what's going on. I think that, in my experience, can be really liberating as well. So let's practice. Once again, I invite you to find a good seat. And when you've settled and made any necessary adjustments, just allow your eyes to close or gently soften your gaze. Let's just take a few deep breaths together. Allow yourself to feel rooted wherever you are, whether you're sitting or standing or walking or lying down. Feel the ground beneath you. And bring some soft and loving attention to your breath. That ruach, that breath that is moving in you and through you and between all of us. And I invite you, if you wish, really just to stay here, collecting your attention and breathing. And if you feel curious and well-resourced to practice some inquiry-based meditation, I invite you to open your field of awareness to include whatever is happening in the present moment. What is being felt? What is being thought? Look and see what's arising. And simply know that this is a mental state. Ah, this is fear. Ah, this is grief. Ah, this is worry. And now see if you can open to and allow and accept whatever is coming up. And we accept it even if it's unpleasant, as anxiety often is. Can you simply be with this? Can we be with what is without banishing it, but instead learning from it, not captured by it? So we'll continue for the next few minutes. There's no need to practice this inquiry if you don't wish. Feel free to just breathe and relax and soften and be here. And I'll bring us together in a couple of minutes with the sound of my voice. Kol haolam kulo gesher tzar meod, gesher tzar meod, gesher tzar meod. Kol haolam kulo gesher tzar meod, gesher tzar meod. Begin to deepen your breath and welcome in this new version of you, born of your practice, born of this commitment to continue to taking the next steps forward on your journey towards individual and collective liberation, not without fear, but despite our fear. I invite you to allow your hands to cradle each other with one hand resting in the other. And into our hands, we place gratitude for this practice, gratitude for this opportunity to be in accepting relationship, benevolent relationship with anxieties and fears and whatever else arises moment to moment. May we continue to work wisely with our fears so that we don't weaponize them against ourselves and others. May we hold them with curiosity and perspective so that we are not discouraged from forging ahead, even when it's hard. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. If you close them, and I'll turn it back to Rabbi Mark for Kaddish Yatom.
Thank you so much, as always, Rabbi Jenny, for guiding us so beautifully today, helping us hold all the anxieties and fears that so many of us are feeling. Friends, let's take a moment here to hold each other, to create a minyan of support for those who are in mourning, or if you're observing a yard site. Today I'm observing the yard site of my grandfather, Morris Margolius, for whom I am the namesake, thinking of him as I look at his yard site candle, and invite you to put the name or names of anyone whose memory, whose neshama you're holding and honoring today in the chat now or after we recite Kaddish. And if you're not reciting Kaddish, as always, please stay present for a few moments to support those who are. And if you're joining me for the Kaddish, please rise in body or in spirit, and you can unmute at this time.
Yitkadal,
Gadal v'kadash shemei
Kadash,
rabah.
Shemay Rabba,
Alma divra
Alma
kiyutzon
Divra,
v'yamid
Yurke, Diamid,
hayifon v'yifon v'yeh
Ayakon,
tahor
Diamid,
v'yeh
Vaye,
Gala
Beit Israel, La,
Yehesh
My Ami,
shemei rabah
Ami,
levarach olam
E,
v'amelech
Rabba,
v'yah
Leola,
v'at
Leola,
va'ar v'yitral
Vitra, Vitra,
ar v'yitkal shemei
Shalel, Bitalal, Shemay,
v'yod
Kasha,
elamim
Ela,
tav shirach
Oshirata, Shirata,
Nachamatza, Iran Ba'alma Imru,
Ela,
Yesh Lama
Ela,
Rabba
Amru,
Nimshalacha,
Amel, Yesh, Lama, Rabba,
Rein
Shalai,
B'Yalta,
Hayim, Elim, V'Yoko, Yisrael, V'Yamru, Amin,
Shalom
Shalom,
B'Yamam,
B'Yamam,
Shat
Ya'aseh,
Shalom,
Shalom,
Rein
Yisrael,
B'Yalta, B'Yalta,
Oyoshe, Imru, Amen.
Amen. Amen. Friends, thanks so much for joining us today, and I want to thank you personally also today for it's very meaningful for us to end and seal our practice each day with the Kaddish Tome, the Mourner's Kaddish, and just personally share, how much I appreciate being able to observe yard sites with this community and feel that support and feel the souls of those we're remembering present with us as we close each day. So thank you for that. Thanks to Harry for holding our space today, and Rabbi Jenny Solomon for leading us again, so guiding us so skillfully and beautifully today. If you're leaving now, we hope you'll join us tomorrow. Oops. Oops. Let's try this better. Okay. Hope you'll join us tomorrow. Chloe Zelka, Rabbi Chloe Zelka, who also is a member of the IJS board, together with Rabbi Jenny, will be leading us from Boston tomorrow. And Dr. David Gottlieb of Spertus Institute in Chicago will lead us to sit into Shabbat on Friday. So, as always, you're invited to join us for conversation with today's teacher, Rabbi Jenny Solomon. If you have a question you'd like to ask Rabbi Jenny, please put it in the chat, and I'll try to work it into the conversation. And you are always welcome just to share your reflections on your experience in our session today. Jenny, thanks again, as always. And I want to start just with reflecting back the teaching that as I heard it, make sure I got it right, let you correct me. And then the other thing I really want to do is I want to go back to the Parsha and that section that you brought, which I thought was very powerful. I want to talk about the connection between referring to these sources when we do this practice, but it's first just starting with anxiety at the Red Sea, that we're standing at today and these days. And what I heard was two approaches. One, to ground ourselves, to be, just to kind of take care of ourselves, right? Attend to ourselves. And that's kind of the upshot that I got, right? And the other was to grow in awareness of actually what's happening, including the feeling of anxiety or whatever, grief or whatever the feelings might be, but not be gripped by those. In other words, be able to say, this is something that is happening now, but it doesn't define me. It doesn't define what reality. This is not the end of the story. Got that right? Yes?
Perfect.
Okay, good. Okay, so from there, you had me, well, first you had me at relax your jaw, but then we go into the sources, and you said something you may or may not remember, that you said the Israelites were uh, standing at the sea or something, and then you said we're standing at the sea. You switched from Israelites to us, and I don't want to let that go. I really would like to, lift that up and unpack that for people, because many of our sessions begin with text study or something about the Parsha and from the sources, ancient sources. And they go, why do we do that? We don't just do that to kind of dress up what we're doing as, oh, it's Jewish, we got Torah here. It's actually that the Torah is just expressing something true that is not true like back then. It actually is happening now if we pay attention to it. So I want to take a moment here to kind of lift that up, because it's easy to think of, okay, we got that out of the way. Now let's meditate. But
Yeah.
what we're meditating on what the Torah is describing, and that passage is incredible for
Yeah.
this. It's such a great Jewish, what just illuminated how much that passage describes what we essentially do every day, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've really learned from one of the extraordinary gifts of learning Chassidut, learning Hasidic texts with our IJS community. I've learned that, this story, this beloved story that we all
hmm
share, that is the
hmm
Torah, is
hmm
not just something that happened once upon a time. It is describing something that is part of our inner landscaping happening
Mm-hmm.
right now.
Mm-hmm.
And when we allow ourselves to read ourselves into this cherished story, um, we can, that's kind of the work. That's the gift.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So yeah, it's a they, and at moments, sometimes it's helpful to think about something having happened once to our ancestors, and it is also a we and a
Right.
me, and
Right.
that can be incredibly supportive and helpful as well.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Which reminds me to thank Margaret Buckman for sponsoring this practice today. And it's serendipitous that it's honoring Rabbi Jonathan Slater, who, of course, has been a master teacher of Hasidic, neo-Hasidic understanding of Torah, exactly the way you're describing, of seeing Torah as describing spiritual dynamics that are at work in the world and within us, and the characters as representing different aspects of ourselves, as Jewish mystical commentary does. And I see Ilan, said, is a quite a knowledgeable person talking about how this was his bar mitzvah parsha and saying it's amazing. You can like see something new every time. So now I want to shift a little bit to the question of anxiety because that's such a. I mean, it's even though we know how the story turns out, they get spoiler alert, they do get to the other side. In the moment, every time they get to the sea and Pharaoh's pursuing, there's that kind of what will happen cliffhanger
Yeah,
sense of anxiety. You still feel anxiety. Where to go? There's nothing ahead, and there's danger from behind, and there's this anxiety. So Moses says, "Don't al tiro, don't be afraid." Right? They're afraid. He says, "Don't be afraid." And then you ended with, and I put the words in the chat to Kol Halam Kulo Gesher Tzar Ma'od, this, teaching that's ascribed to Rabbi Nachman, which, we know is also like a variation of what he seems to have actually taught, which is the question is, when we experience fear, um, are we hearing Moshe, our inner Moshe saying to us, don't be afraid, Um, uh, Are we hearing Rabbi Nachman say, "Lo lefached klal," don't fear at all? Or are we hearing, "Don't let the fear trap you. Don't let the
yeah,
fear overwhelm you."
yeah. I mean, I hear the latter. And
Hmm.
many of you know this, but I believe there was like an error in the transcription, at
Yeah.
least as it made its way from Rabbi Nachman's mouth, in which he concluded that teaching with lo lahit pached klal, that one should not become overwhelmed or paralyzed by one's own fears. Not that one shouldn't fear at all. And I'm sort of reading that into Moses's words as well. I think part of the wisdom of our meditation work is knowing that it's like the Besh said, we can't chase darkness out of the room with a broom, but we can light a candle, and
Hmm.
we can't make ourselves be unafraid. At least I have not been successful in that. But I can be with my fear in a way that it is less all-consuming. It is less um, self-sabotaging. It's less
Hmm.
paralyzing. And I think that's the work here.
Yeah. So to paraphrase, if Moshe was leading the daily set today, right, he
Yeah,
he would be saying, based on this parsha, anchor yourself, right? Um, Hityatzvu, which is the same root as in Nitzav, like it's really we have so many. One of the beauties of being able to like connect with the Hebrew, biblical Hebrew, is the nuance of the different. You could say standing. There's Omed, but there's also Nitzav, which is like they're standing and they're standing, right? And we have a whole parsha at the end, fittingly Nitzavim. which describes that. You're all nitzavim. The whole people are nitzavim. And here he's inviting them to stand strongly, to be still, like you said, and to be in the present, hayom, right?
Yep.
Pretty
Yep.
good. He must have gone to Jewish mindfulness
I
meditation
know. I
retreat
know.
training.
He's totally just came off a retreat.
It's
Um,
crazy.
but you know what else I love just hearing you share that, Mark, is we need not be still to do all of those things.
Hmm.
I think there is a way, I mean, I have to just imagine like
Hmm.
Moses was not saying, all right, folks, like let's just have a sit here
Right.
before we proceed.
Hmm.
But the idea of kind of like feeling the ground underneath our feet or engaging
Hmm.
your core,
Hmm.
really in the body and of experiencing in an inner way a sort of momentary stillness and peace.
Hmm.
We can do that when we're taking the next step forward. And I think it's something we train in here when we may actually find ourselves sitting, so that when we are continuing to forge ahead, we can access that engagement, um, even in
Yeah.
the midst of action.
Well, yeah, actually, it's like just based like what taking what you're saying and connecting with what happens next in the Torah is that, God says, hey, who don't look at me, raise your staff and tell them to move forward, right? So
Yeah,
if you take the two together, you could say, okay, you've done your little sit there for a moment. Now take what you got from that and start walking through the water. They're able to summon the courage to walk through what seemed impassable before because of having that moment with Moshe. Because I've always said like, oh no, then God is correcting Moshe by saying like, no, 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 you got it wrong. It should just keep moving. But actually, if you put them together, right, it's quite beautiful that like, let's pause here, let's moment, take a breath, anchor yourself, be in
yeah.
the present, breathe. All right, now
Let's
let's take
go.
a step. Let's take a
Yeah,
step into the water. Really
yeah.
beautiful. There is a question here from Roberta, Jenny. Also ask crowdsourcing, which is always a beautiful thing in the chat here, about tips for seeing a personal anxiety, for example, like a medical issue, as a more impersonal one. That sounds to me like a variation on what you were saying about just like sort of noticing, right? This is anxiety. I don't know if it makes it impersonal necessarily, but instead of saying, I'm anxious about X, right? And focusing on X, saying like, I'm anxious. This is anxiety. This is fear, right? And
Correct.
that it loses a little bit of its grip on us if we can do that.
Yeah, yeah. My experience is like when I'm able to name that feeling arising, and usually it does often have to do with something that's personal.
Hmm.
Um, it just feels when I can name that this is what anxiety feels
Hmm.
like, it becomes less solid.
Yeah.
I remember that this isn't actually something hard. This isn't something that's essentially part of me. This is an experience that is actively moving through me, and it will change. It
Hmm.
changes. It changes before my very closed eyes. And there's something about just bringing awareness to the truth that this anxiety is not a thing. And that makes it easier to bear.
Yeah. I guess I mean, Roberta, I think in answer to that response to your question, I think that kind of sounds like that, like the depersonalization of it. Um, takes, I guess, enough of the edge off that we are not paralyzed. I'm just thinking about it when you're just acknowledging here when we gather every day and say like, wow, this is hard. And we've had, don't even have to name all the different hard things that we have moved through. And then there's another hard thing, and there's another
Yeah.
hard thing. Um, and just saying out loud, especially in community, this is hard,
Yeah.
makes it a
Yep.
little less hard. That said, Jenny, thank you so much, not just for today, but for the many, many, many contributions you've made to this community of practice, and needless to say, for IJS in your role on the board and as I don't know if you're the official rabbi for the board, but you're one of the rabbis. You're one of the rabbis on the board, but a wonderful rabbi for the board as well,
Thank you.
and for the blessed community of Beth Meyer Synagogue in Raleigh. And always a pleasure, always a blessing. Thank you so
Same.
much.
Same. Such a gift from you.
Harry, thanks to you. Thanks to each of you for being here. Hope to see you all tomorrow to practice with Rabbi Chloe Zelka, everyone.
Amen.
Blessings till then.